Hi everyone, welcome to this lunchtime talk with the Next Level Group. My name is Pete. Now, I'm very happy to be invited this time back to talk about real estate or property investment again. Okay, so for those of you who are watching this right now, feel free to enjoy your lunch if you have a takeaway, all right, or if you are doing any other things during your lunchtime, maybe an exercise, all right. Feel free to continue, right? And I want to share with you guys on the Singapore property scene in particular, right? And I want to share with you one of the latest news in property investment, and that is the whole conversation about VERS and SERS, okay? And also, I want to share with you guys right now what is the update, okay, on the Singapore new launch scene in Singapore with regards to private property as well. Okay, so welcome in. All right, I hope to make this is the best lunchtime that you can ever have, where at the same time, while you're nourishing yourself with food, I want to nourish you as investors. All right, more investing knowledge over here. Okay, so without further ado, let me just get the session started. Now, guys, if you are listening to this live, do let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. Okay, do type hi in the chat. Okay, so over here, let's see. Okay, I can see some of you over here as well. Hi, Bowen. Okay, so let me share my screen. All right. Okay, fantastic. Let me just shift a few things, then we can see each other. Can see each other. All right. Okay. Okay, can. All right, let me bring up the share screen again. It went away. Okay. All right, fantastic. Okay, so today this is the topic. We're going to talk about the most recent news about SERS, VERS, and also talk about how the Singapore property landscape is evolving, right? So both in the public housing and also in the private housing segment. Okay, so I can see some of you here, like Esther is here. Hi, Esther. Grace. Hi. Okay. Boon Eng as well. Hi, Joy. Hello, hello. Okay. All right, fantastic to have you guys with us. Okay, so let me touch on the quick disclaimer. Everything that I say here, although is investment related, but it is not meant to be seen as an investment advice or recommendation. Okay, so everybody here, the main thing about what I'm sharing here is to empower all of you to be make a decision for yourself, right? Make an educated decision in your investment to take control of your investment. Okay, so make sure everything that you listen here, right, is for education, and I hope to give you guys some form of entertainment as well. All right, so later on we have some fun together. Now, the news that I want to talk about is this. Okay, so this was actually announced pretty recently by the Singapore government, talking about this thing called the SERS. Okay, so I'm not sure if you are aware what SERS or VERS stands for. Okay, so basically, VERS stands for Voluntary Early Redevelopment Scheme. Okay, so what exactly is this? This is actually talking about how to redevelop the older public housing, the older HDB flats in Singapore. Now, in the past, there was another project, okay, called the SERS. Okay, SERS is the Selective En Bloc Redevelopment Scheme. Now, in the past, this was perhaps the topic that a lot of people are looking out for when they buy an old flat. Why? Because when they buy an old flat, the dream is that, hey, let's go for SERS, right? And when there's SERS, what will happen is that you'll receive a large payout because your HDB block is being en bloc by the government. Okay. But now the news is telling you that, hey, there is currently no more plans. Okay. Or at least at this moment, there's no plans for more SERS going forward. And in replacement, they will do a VERS. Okay. So today I want to go through the details. What does a VERS stands for? How is it different from SERS? And I want to share with you the impact on the HDB market. Now, the whole concept of VERS, okay, which is a voluntary scheme, okay, is not new, right? In fact, it was already mentioned in 2018. Okay, so this was mentioned some time ago in 2018 by our back then Prime Minister Lee, talking about residents can vote whether they want to redevelop their old flat and receive some kind of compensation, right, when their flats reach an age of 70 years old. Okay, so this is not new. This was something already talked about, and most recently, they re-mentioned it again. Now, what is VERS? VERS is basically telling people that, hey, your flat is already very old, right? There's only about 29 years of lease left. The government is going to pay you some form of compensation, right? Financial cash to take back the land, right? And redevelop the place. Okay. Now, how is it different from SERS previously when it is a selective en bloc and a lot of people love it, right? It's because SERS is actually a compulsory system. So you don't need to vote on it, whereas VERS, you vote on it, okay? And another thing that a lot of people really like about SERS is that SERS has a much more generous payout, okay? So over here, you can see our Minister Chi says that VERS may have less financial upside for the residents because by the time they come to VERS, your flats are already 70 years old, okay? So it will be a lot older. Whereas SER sometimes is done on flats that are, a little bit younger, maybe 50 years or even 60 years old, okay? So this is the main difference, right? In terms of VERS and SERS, primarily is that VERS will get lesser financial upside and VERS is also voluntary, whereas last time SERS, okay, where it's selective en bloc, it is compulsory. That means the government come to you and say, hey, I'm going to take back your land. This is the amount you're going to take. You have no say. Whereas VERS is a voluntary system. You get to vote, right? So probably you have to vote to pass a certain percentage before the VERS can carry on. Okay. Now, when do we expect this VERS to commence? Okay, so over here, there was a bit more color, right? They talk about there's no need to scale up VERS, okay, until sometime in late 2030, okay, when the flats are reaching. So you can expect that going forward, there's no more selective en bloc, there's no more SERS, plus the voluntary scheme VERS will only kick in around 2030, late 2030, okay? And why is that the case? Because right now, they are trying to flesh out the framework, right, for VERS. So you will expect the government very soon to come out with all this engagement. They talk about engaging Singaporeans to take in their views for feedback, okay? And that also means one thing, they are still at a very early stage of developing the first framework. Why? Because they still want to take in your feedback, right? That means maybe there's still a lot of wiggle room, right, at an early stage of the discussion, okay? Now, so how will VERS work? Let me go into details, okay? Because SERS is gone already. Let's focus on VERS, right? How will VERS work? VERS is going to be through a voting system, right? It will only proceed if a majority of the HDB flat residents, okay, they never say how many percent. My personal guess is maybe around 75%, 80%, right? Very similar to how the private condo does en bloc as well. Okay. Oh, guys, by the way, if you all have any questions about what I said or you have questions about the presentation, do type your questions in the chat as well. Okay. So how would it pan out? I always tell my one-on-one member when I do property consultation with them, right, is to say, hey, think of all scenarios, right? Because if you can tolerate all scenarios, especially the worst case scenario, then your investment will work in your favor. Okay, so over here, let's go through what are the possible scenarios for VERS. Okay, number one is that, hey, the vote doesn't go through. Maybe there's not enough people wanting to VERS, right? So you get to keep your flat until the end of the lease. Okay, but the thing is this, what happened at the end of the lease? What happened to the value of the property? Can you type it in the chat? Okay, what happened to the value? All right, okay, now, if the vote passes, very good. Then you will need to start to look for somewhere to move to. You will probably get some form of compensation and you can proceed forward. Okay? But to me, the thing is, okay, if the vote passes, I think that's good. You get some money back. You can buy another place. But if the votes fail, that means you are probably stuck with your flat that has only about 20 over years left. And there's a very good chance it will, what happened? When you run until the end of the lease, what happened? It will run until zero. Okay, so to me, is my opinion is this: right now with the selective en bloc, which is a compulsory en bloc gone, where it used to be this golden egg that people hope to receive when they buy older HDB flat. Now, for those who are holding on to older HDB flat, like 40 years and above, there is a real possibility that some of this flat, if the VERS doesn't go through, it will run to zero. It will run to value zero when the lease goes down to zero. Okay, all right. So this is really, really important. Okay. For those of you who are still hoping for SERS, I would say currently, as of now, there's no more plans for SERS. Okay, or they call it no more hope for SERS. So do not wish for that. Okay. Now, And I think, to be very honest, in my view, there is also a very good chance that the VERS for certain of such en bloc, right, won't go through. Why? Because we already have experience like this. Okay, so I have also clients that I work on my one-on-one, right? They have gone through a en bloc process, a condo en bloc process, and it is already very clear right now, even on a condo level, where the number of units is much lesser than an HDB flat. Okay, so a condo, maybe a mid-sized one, maybe you have like 300 residents, right? But if you look at HDB estate, usually you will have more than 300 residents. Okay, so with just 300 residents, the current condo that has gone through en bloc already shows us how tough the process can be. Later, I'll show you some examples. Okay, and furthermore, right, with the fact that VERS is going to be financially less attractive than compared to SERS, you will more likely people will vote that they don't want to move. Okay, not yes, they will vote no, right? They'll say, hey, if I'm going to get back just this small amount of money, right, I might as well don't sell my house back to the government. I'll continue to stay here for the rest of the maybe 20 years. Okay, so that's why I think, because it's a voluntary scheme and is less financially attractive compared to the SERS, okay, there can be a very good chance. All right, I don't know whether it's good or not, but there can be a very significant chance that even those flats that got selected for VERS might not go through. Okay, so let me show you some examples here. For example, right now, still ongoing Thomson View, okay, right, is undergoing some dispute because the residents cannot quite agree, and the strata title board came in to stop the en bloc, right? So these are the things that's happened. They are trying to mediate, and you can read over here, mediate and resolve objections raised to the sale. Okay, right? So that's one example. And over here, the news article went into further details. For example, some of them feel that the residents can be very nasty later on because some want to leave, some don't want to leave, okay? Or another condo, for example, Tanah Merah, right? The condo, his name is Tanah Merah, also failed their en bloc sale in 3 attempts. I mean, they tried 3 times. Okay, so the thing is this, I'm not sure how many times the government will try with VERS. So for example, let's say you live in this old block, right? The government will try to VERS 1 time. If it fails, will the government try a second and a third time? The current position is not very clear. Okay, but for Tanah Merah is that after they have gone through 3 times, and the latest was just as recent as 2023, they still could not secure the 80% votes. Okay, so for condo right now to go through en bloc is 80%. Will that be the case for VERS? We don't know yet. We need to wait for more details. But I would say it should be roughly around that, 75 to 80%. Okay, so this is when it gets very intense for those people. When your VERS fail or your en bloc fail, over here the article says, right, once harmonious residential community can be left in turmoil with disappointment and resentment among neighbors. Okay, so this is where I see the potential, VERS not going through because people of different opinions, some want to stay, some do not want to stay. Okay, all right. And furthermore, one more thing I want to highlight is that from the use of words, it seems like not every HDB flat will get VERS. Okay, I want to highlight this is just a question mark from me. It is not clear yet, but in the newspaper article, they did say that VERS is offered to selected precincts. Okay, so does that mean every flat reached 70 years will get VERS? Maybe yes, maybe no. Okay, so it is currently not so clear, right? So this is my first view, is that it may not go through. The VERS may not go through, even though it's going to be the replacement for SERS. Okay, because SERS is compulsory, this is voluntary. All right, and this will have a great impact on those people later on. I'll share more about those of you who might be holding on to an older HDB flat. Okay, and my next point, which is my opinion again, okay, not investment advice, is that with all this, it is going to be quite challenging for those who have bought sky-high HDB prices recently. Okay, so I think many of you would know these few years we have seen more and more HDB transaction busting $1 million. Okay, and if it happens to be a very, very old flat, right, my view is that these owners may have difficulty selling them later on. Okay, so what are the difficulties? Let me explain to you. Okay, now, this is something that I took from the agency PropNext, okay, and this is the very famous Bala curve, okay. Honestly, I don't know whether the person drew it is called Bala, but I also don't know why is it called Bala curve. but it is basically what we term it as a leasehold versus freehold value percentage. So basically, this chart is telling you as a leasehold property ages, okay, so you can see the years over here, right? So as it goes on, the number of lease decays away, right? The number of remaining years left get lesser and lesser. The value of the property in comparison to a freehold property will start to reduce, okay? And there seems to be this magical point at 60 years left. That also means if your property is around 40 years old, okay, you can see the value start to drop off much more rapidly. Okay, much more rapidly. So this is one thing that a lot of people need to take note of, is that if it's leasehold, there is always going to be a lease decay. And how fast will it decay? Usually it will decay quite fast or faster after the 40-year mark. Okay, and that's also why when come to all the conversation, they talk about resale flats, okay, which are at least 40 years old. So we term this, or they term this, the newspaper article term this as older HDB flat. Okay, and back in 2024, we had a record transaction of 3,042 of such transaction in the first half of 2024, right? So this goes to show that even though the flats are a lot older, there are still many people who are interested to buy this flat. So the issue with all these older flats is going to impact a significant group of people. I don't know if any of you here have this issue, right? But I want to share with you my most honest opinion, okay? Right? And hopefully you all get something out of this lunch talk, okay? Number one, what are the issues? Number one is that it will impact you being able to use your CPF. Now, not you as a seller, but your buyer, okay? So the primary issue of the older HDB flat, right, is that the buyer may not, okay, be able to fully utilize the CPF. In Singapore, we know that most of the buyers would pretty much empty out the whole CPF to buy a house. This is to reduce the cash outlay, okay? Now, why can't they use their full CPF for older flat? Is because there is this regulation or requirement that the remaining lease on the flat, okay, needs to cover the buyer, all right, or if it's two of them, the youngest buyer, until age 95. Okay, so let me give you an example. So let's say today you are 35 years old. Actually, it's not that old, okay, right? 35 years old, you may already have problem buying an old flat like this, okay? So let's say if the flat that you wish to purchase was built in 1977, okay, right? So how old is that? Okay, so let's take today's date, today's year, minus 1977, okay? So it's a 48-year-old flat, okay? Just passing into the consideration of an old flat, right? So the remaining lease is 52 years, okay? It will only cover the buyer until 87, because if you take 52 plus 35, only cover you to 87. So therefore, you are not able, if you're the buyer, you are not able to fully utilize 100% of your CPF that's available for purchase. Even if you have money inside, right? Now, to know exactly what is the figure, what is it prorated to, I will encourage you to go to the HDB website or CPF website to have a look. But just remember, when your flat is older, you may, right, exclude a certain group of buyer because they might not want to buy an old flat just because they cannot fully utilize their CPF. Okay, so that's point number one. Number two is that it may also impact the buyer's loan to value ratio. Okay, now for those of you who are new to this whole mortgage scheme, let me explain to you. When you take a loan, the bank will give you a loan to value ratio. Okay, for most flats, if let's say you're taking a loan from the bank, they will lend you 75% of the value. That is the standard. Okay, that is the standard, right? However, if it's a much older flat, actually the bank has the prerogative, right, to manage their own risk, okay, to issue you a lesser loan to value ratio. Okay, what is the reason? There could be many reasons. Number one, of course, an older flat, there will be more subjected to maintenance, wear and tear. But they are also worried at the end of the day, will there be value left for this property? What if it runs to zero? Then there's no value, right? So they need to manage their own risk as banks. Okay, so they may lend you less. Then this once again will have be issue for the sellers, because then you will have one group of buyers who will say, wow, I cannot take the 75% loan to buy this place. I need to fork out a lot of cash. Let me just not do it anymore. Okay? So these are all, I would say, concerns that people will have when they are buying older property. Okay? All right. So what's going to happen from here with all these announcements of VERS and SERS? Okay? The important thing is to understand the impact and understand what can potentially happen and what should you do when you are in the market. Okay? Because in the property world, it's all about understanding, right? Where is the information, digesting the information, and ask yourself, okay, what do I need to do? Right? Taking action. Okay. A lot of times I've seen people in the market, what they do is they buy something already, right? Let's say they buy a HDB or they buy a condo. Even if it's not going their way, what is the most common thing people do? Is that they turn into an ostrich. They just put their head in the sand, right? And hopefully it doesn't apply to them, or hopefully, as time passes, it doesn't impact them. Guys, it doesn't work this way. Okay. In the investment world, we always say, right? Doing something is a strategy, but hope is not a strategy. Okay, right? So my opinion on how this whole VERS and SERS is going to impact the investors is this, or the homeowners is this. Okay, right now we are seeing quite a number of older HDB flats, older than 40 years old, still selling at very premium prices. Okay, but I think it was because in the past people are looking at it and, hey, if I buy an old house, maybe I'll get selected en bloc, right? I'll get SERS, okay, and maybe even I'll get VERS, I don't know, right? But right now with the SERS basically gone, okay, and VERS is 5 years away, right? 2030 and late 2030, we don't know what's going to happen in between. Okay, so I think without the SERS, there might be a market repricing of all these older HDB flats. Okay, so my view is that for those of you who are thinking of, hey, I want to buy such older HDB flat because maybe they are so-called quote unquote cheaper than the newer ones, or maybe they are bigger, just be very aware of the danger here is that past a certain point, you may have difficulty selling, right? Your buyer pool will start to shrink. It's not that you won't be able to sell, right? Maybe you still can sell, but just remember the buyer pool will start to shrink. Okay. Another thing I feel that we might need to also relook, but this one is a bit more abstract, okay, is that we used to think of our HDB leases as 99 years, okay? But now with the whole VERS starting at about 70 years old, okay, do we need to review our HDB flats as actually we might only be able to own it for 70 years before the VERS comes in, okay, right? Then I might need to buy another place, okay? So this is important for those of you who are planning, right? And overall, I feel that we just need to wait until late 2030 to have more clarity on the VERS project. Okay. However, right now, as we are waiting, while the VERS details are not out yet, the challenge is this: is that if you own or you're going to buy an older HDB flat, your HDB flat will continue to have lease decay for at least the next 5 years before plans are out. Okay, so be very careful. Whenever I see such news, on the news that wow, very old HDB flats selling for sky high prices, I get very worried because a lot of buyers previously thinks that even if the HDB is like 50 years old or whatever, I still can sell at a profit at the end of the day. Okay, but now without the selective en bloc and with the VERS quite far away, this may not be true anymore. Okay, so really buyers beware. Right. Let me give you an example of a flat area that may have this situation. Okay, I don't know if any of you are staying in this area, but I'm just going to share with you very openly. Okay, so this is the Marine Parade area. All right, so you can see over here Marine Parade Drive, Marine Parade Terrace, and Marine Parade Crescent. Okay, Marine Crescent. And you can see the remaining lease of these units. Some of them are even below 50. That means they are already 49 years and above. Okay, and these are not huge flats, by the way. These are just 4-room flats. Okay, 4-room flats. And you can see some of them as recently as this year, May, okay, for example, was sold for 700,000. 730, 720. These are the higher floors. The mid floor was sold for 600,000. Okay, so my question is, if you were to hold on to this for another 5 years and the remaining lease now is only 45, okay, with a lesser buyer pool, with the lease decaying rapidly, Remember the Bala curve, right? Will the owners of this property be expecting to sell for a profit? Now, the question, will they sell for a profit? For a profit, it really depends on many things, for example, inflation and whatnot. But I think the challenge is that once the lease decay really passes a certain point, okay, the buyer's interest will start to drop. And now, without the selective en bloc, I think these prices will need to be relooked. I think the market will reprice it accordingly, okay? But right now, looking at it, do we think that in 5 years' time, some of these units can sell for, I don't know, 800K still, 850K still, so that they can at least make 100K profit? That is a very big question mark. Okay? All right. So, all in all, if I'm in this situation, okay, what would I do? Right. So, once again, I'm not telling you what to do. This is not investment advice, but I want to share very openly what would I do? What would Pete do? Okay. Number one is that I will calculate my finances properly. Okay. I want to really make sure that I have the funds for it. If I want to buy a really old flat, then I need to make sure that I have the funds to hold on to it and not just to think about flipping. Okay. Number two is, please, I will not hope for SERS and VERS really. If I were to buy an old flat over here, I will really think about really it's just for my own stay. Okay. Just for my own needs. But youngsters, okay, if you are in your late 30s, you're still youngsters, okay? That's about my age, right? Think about it. If you're like, maybe 35 years old or 38 years old, okay, so let's say 35 years old. If you buy a flat lease that is maybe like the Marine Parade one, 5 years later, there's only 45 years left, okay? That means by age 80, even if the place don't get VERS, you run until zero, right? Okay, by the age 80, you will have a HDB flat that you bought years ago for 500,000, 600,000 that is effectively zero at that point in time. The government is going to take back the land already. And when you're 80 years old, will you still have the funds to buy another property without SERS, or let's say if the VERS don't go through, right? Will you be able to buy another property at that age? Do you have enough funds? Okay, so I think that makes a very important point why youngsters going forward, when you're buying older HDB flats, you really need to think through it very carefully. Okay, all right. Another thing is, please don't overpay for the resale flat, because like I said, I think there's going to be a market repricing of such flats. Okay, and if you still want to have the en bloc dream, I think the only outlet right now you can think of, okay, or you can even consider is private property. Okay, the en bloc scene in private property is still quite strong. We still do see a bit of en bloc here and there. The activity is still there. Okay, and last thing, I just want to say that I feel that overall the government approach over here is very sound. They are trying to convince everybody that, hey, the HDB flat, while it has been very lucrative in the past few years, but really in the long term, the approach for the government is very clear. Is that HDB flat is a roof over your head. It's for you to stay there rather to speculate. And as property investors ourselves, I think it's very important to look at where the direction is going, where the regulations is going, and not to go against the flow. Okay, because I think very seldom when you go against the flow of the regulations, it will end up well for you. All right. So this is what I will do over here. Okay. So any questions about SERS, about VERS? Anybody currently you're looking at older HDB flats, okay, that you're affected? Do type your questions in the chat below. Now, if older HDB flats is a concern here, okay, then the question is, what can we do? Okay, what can we do? Okay, so Bowen has a question here. I'm not able to bring up the question, but Bowen can bring it up or the admin can help me to bring up Bowen's question over here. Okay, so Bowen's question is, will this push up the private prices even more? Okay, I would think, right, it will increase the demand, right, for private property, right? Because now it just means that there's a group of resale flat that will be less attractive to buyers, okay, with this whole announcement about SERS and VERS. And guess what? This group of buyers will either have to still buy resale HDB flat, or they might even just flow to private condos. Okay, that is very possible. All right. And with that said, I want to give you guys a very quick update, right, on recently the new launch condo prices and what are the take-up rate. Okay, because I always believe that new launch is always the frontier, okay, that is in front of all the other markets. That means the new launch do how well, right, or do how poorly, it will slowly trickle down to the resale market. Okay, So let's take a look. For example, recently, I think many of you were looking at this, right? Springleaf residents in the Springleaf MRT area did fantastic. Okay, so a 900 unit project, 900 plus unit project, sold 92%. My gosh. Okay, and mind you, the price is not exactly the very cheap. It's 2,175 on average. That means some of them maybe even higher. Okay, right now, where the thing is this. Okay, this was actually on a plot. Okay, so this is where the Springleaf is. Okay, the closer plot to the MRT previously was actually being shunned by developer. Do you know that? Okay, so the Upper Thomson Road GLS site previously in last year in June actually received no bids. Zero. That means no developer bid for it. Okay, in fact, I think this was one of the first few times that we saw no bids. And one of the main reason that many people speculated is that because the developmental plans included 100 service apartment requirement. Honestly, if you are in the Springleaf area, I don't think anybody will want to come here and stay in service apartment, correct? Okay, usually service apartment are more towards CBD area, central areas. Okay, so when this receive no bids, right? Okay, next time round when they relaunch it, right now you can see the relaunch is very good. Okay, they don't talk about the service apartment already. The ground floor will have a commercial area. Okay, not a big commercial area, just 2,000 square meter, but still is a commercial area. So with the most recent performance of Springleaf Residences, which is over here, okay, I think right now the interest for this plot of land will go up significantly. The developer will look at it with a different eye already, right? They'll look at it and say, wow, previously there was service apartment, I don't like it, and this place was very untested, okay? But now I have Springleaf residents to tell me that, hey, the demand is through the roof, 92% sold, okay? Right? If I have more units, I probably can sell more. So I do expect this land, when it's tendered, there will be much more developer interest. Okay, this land is currently still open for tender. Now, another one, okay, which is at the Chuan Grove area. This is another very popular area. Previously, we had Chuan Park over here that was sold and it was really popular. This time round, this plot of land, this small plot of land, not a big plot, this small plot of land, attracted 7 bids. 7. Okay. And the most interesting thing is that the bid price is not cheap at all. 1,376. Okay, so remember this number. Later on, we'll do a comparison with the rest. Okay. And you can see over here, the bidding price are all fairly close. Right? Very competitive. You see all the major players here. City Development, Sim Lian, Kingsford, Hong Leong, CK Assets all came in. Okay. And Sing Holdings and Sunway Development won the bid. Okay. So now in comparison to the older Chuan Park. Okay, so let me go back to here. Chuan Park is here, right? Chuan Park, in fact, is even closer to the MRT station. It's right on top of the MRT station, okay? Right? And this is the recent bid at Chuan Grove. This is 1,376. 1,376. Okay? Back in 2022, just 3 years ago, the Chuan Park condo went undergo en bloc. Okay, so once again, for those of you who say, no more SERS, no more VERS, can I do en bloc or not? Okay, private condo still can. Okay, so 2022, Kingsford acquired the old Chuan Park, and after they do everything in, it's about 1,256 per square foot, right? So when we look at this, what we can observe is that actually right now, the property prices has been increasing. Okay, so the Chuan Grove one is 1,376. Most recently, we also had a bid at Bayshore at 1,388. Okay, and even more recently, June, Dunnan Road went for 1,410. So overall, you can see the prices of en bloc or land sale back in 2022 till today, the land price kept increasing. Okay, so this is Chuan Grove. Now there is another Chuan Grove plot right now. So remember there were 7 bidders earlier on. Okay, so all these 7 bidders, right, is very likely, okay, if they have the funds, they will want to go again for the next plot. Okay, that is just beside it. Okay, and this is also a significant plot, can house about 505 units. So right now, this plot is also open for tender. So you can see there are a lot of activities in the private new launch segment doing very well, selling very well, and very good lands are being put up for tender. And very good lands are put up for tender, what happens is overall, it pushes up the land price. And guess what is going to happen when land price increase? What will happen to property price? I'll leave you to think about it. Okay? All right. Okay. Another land that was recently bidded that also caught my attention is the one at Holland Link. Now, when you see the word Holland Link, you might be thinking, and you will be forgiven by thinking that, hey, maybe this is near Holland Village. All right. But it is not. Okay. So where exactly is this place? Later I'll show you. But this drew 5 bids. So take note, it is still a very popular plot that many people wanted. Okay. The average per square foot is even higher than the one at Dunnan Road. This is 1432. The one at Dunnan Road was 1410. Okay. So you might be thinking, hey Pete, maybe this is near Holland V. That's why it's worth more, right? Okay. All right. So where exactly is it? Let's take a look. Now, this is the picture. The Dunnan Road one is here. Okay. This is 1410. Okay. This is 1432. This plot over here. Now, guys, can you tell me which one is closer to the MRT? Which one is closer to the main Dunnan Bukit Timah Road? Right? This is actually quite deep in, you know. This is actually quite deep in. And this is not near Holland Village, by the way. Okay. Holland Link is actually not near Holland Village. We are in between 6th Avenue MRT station and King Albert Park MRT station. So what is this telling us? Is that as prices increase, what we are seeing is that areas that are less ideal, less accessible, right, to public transport or even to amenities are also being bidded up. This plot of land is less so-called accessible than the Dunnan Road one, but yet the bid price is 1432. Okay, and it's not a fluke bid. It's not like one person bidded super high and then the rest like didn't bid. 5 developers went for it. Okay, so you can see collectively the prices increase over time. The land prices increase over time. Okay, so with regards to private property, this is my take. Okay, number one is that we can see land prices increasing higher and higher, right? It's getting higher and higher. And the most recent launches are showing us that the demand is very strong when it's a good location, okay, or when the price is good enough. Okay, for example, Springleaf is quite an untested area. There isn't a lot of HDB over there. So the HDB upgraders demand is in doubt, but it's near the MRT and the price is attractive enough. Okay. And when I say attractive enough, it's not like it's 1,000 something. It's 2,175, close to 2,200 per square foot, you know. And this is attractive enough. Okay. So the buyer demand is very strong so long you have a good product at a good price. Okay. Next one is, I would say private property right now is getting more and more attention is because I think people in the HDB market is starting to feel that there are more restrictions coming in, right? In the future, we're going to see all the prime flats, plus flat where they have 10-year MOP, resale levy, and cannot rent out for the first MOP period. So there are more and more restrictions entering into the public housing segment, okay? Which is not wrong because it is meant to keep the public housing affordable, right? But that also drives people to look at private property more so because of lesser restrictions, okay? Next one is that overall, the good news right now is that there is talks about us, or not us, the government reviewing the 15-month waiting period. Okay. So previously, I think for a lot of people who are not entering the private market, right, the main worry is that, hey, Pete, once I enter into the main private market, right, I cannot go back to HDB. So what if, later on I want to sell my private condo and move back to HDB for some reason, right? Maybe I'm retiring or I just want to downsize, right? I cannot do that. I need to wait for 15 months. That means I have to rent somewhere for 15 months. That would effectively eat into my profit, isn't it? Okay. But now, our minister already mentioned that there is a possible review of this 15-month waiting period. okay, to allow more flexibility. So once this is approved, then I would say it will further increase the inflow of buyers into the private property segment. All right. So right now, I think the situation is quite unique, whereby HDB flats, there are more controls coming in, but in the private world, that's where it seems like, hey, there are more and more demand. People are liking it better because good location. Somehow we are getting very good land that's coming out, right? They are not being built into HDB, they are built into condominiums, plus lesser restrictions. And right now, there's even possible 15-month being removed so that you can even go back to HDB quite easily if you want to. Okay. So my take is that right now the situation for private property is pretty good, looking pretty nicely. Okay. And if you remember in our last live stream where I talked about supply and demand, private property right now have a very, very severe supply issue. Okay. And that's also why right now you see developers are going hand over fist, buying land, right? Because there's just not enough units to go around. Okay. All right. So that's my take on it. And overall, I think the main thing for a lot of people is still this, right? Is that, hey, Pete, I'm scared that, if I go and buy, right, I understand you're talking about buying property, but I scared if I buy wrong, I lose a lot. Have you seen people losing a lot of money? The answer is yes, right? You probably know one around you, okay? Or some people say, hey, Pete, I don't know what should I buy? In fact, when I do one-on-one consultation with my one-on-one member, right, I always tell them the important thing is not to buy something that is the most profitable, because the most profitable property may not suit you, because buying property always has an element of you staying there as well. Okay, that's why I truly believe there is no one size fits all solution for everybody, right? What is best for you may not be best for him, right? So it's about finding that solution for all of you. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share with you guys about SERS and VERS and give you guys a quick update on the new launch market. I think the property prices, frankly, going for the next couple of years, it may still continue to increase, but I think increasingly there are more and more, if you observe, things coming down to control the HDB prices. Okay, but I think the setup for private property, okay, like what Bowen said earlier on, will this push up private property price? I think it might, because the supply is low, the buyer's demand is high, and right now we are getting very good land, new land from the government towards developer, right? In terms of Chuan Grove, Holland Link, all this, Springleaf, to build more prime location private property. And I don't think the government is currently thinking about implementing more restrictions on private property. Okay, so what I predict is that private property for the next few years would likely still see very healthy growth. Okay, now would we still see like the 10%, 12% growth during COVID? I don't think so. But actually, as a property investor, that is exactly what we want to avoid. We want to avoid a formation of a bubble. Okay, we don't want it to be 10, 12% for 5 years, 6 years, then later on the bubble bursts and everything collapses now. We don't want a subprime crisis over here, right? But if the private property can still steadily gain about 4%, 5% every single year, that will be your path towards building your retirement nest, building your nest egg. Okay. And that's what I help my one-on-one members do, to plan for them and say, hey, how do you plan for this? If you buy the property a few years later, how much you sell for? This amount, what do you want to do with it? You want to retire or buy another property? Okay. So these are all tailored planning. That's why really what is best for everyone, there's no such thing. There's only what is best for you and what is best for another person. All right. Okay. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys. Now, this is a series of property sharing. Now, the next lunchtime talk, will also be streamed on this YouTube channel once again. Okay. So for those of you who want to join us, do remember to subscribe to the Next Level Academy YouTube channel. Okay. Once you subscribe to this, you'll be alerted when we have the next live stream. And it's not just about property. I think there are also other speakers coming up to share with you different investment topics. Okay, so for those of you who are interested in property related one, do follow the Next Level Academy and follow in particular my live stream. Okay, for the next talk. The next session is going to be on the 3rd of September. And please do let me know which topic you would like to share as well. Okay. All right, so now maybe it's a good time for me to go into questions and answers, Q&A, for those of you who want to. And for the admin team, if you want to, could you put up the Instagram QR code as well for those people who also want to follow through Instagram, if that's your preferred channel? Okay, yeah, so you can see over here at the top left-hand corner, right? If you want, you can follow the Instagram link. Okay, so we'll share these both towards Instagram and also towards YouTube. Okay, can we bring up Chris's question? Okay, so Chris is asking, should I sell my flat at Woodlands now, which is reaching 40 years old? I'm in my mid-40s, then buy a younger flat. Okay, so that's a great question. It requires me to find out more about you, but let's say, okay, I'm just going to give a generic one, okay, because usually on the one-on-one with my one-on-one member, right, I will go deeper and find out more things. For example, what are your funds available? What's your family size, right? After you sell this, are you going to sell one by one or sell one by two? Hey guys, by the way, I'm not a crazy advocate for sell one by two. Okay, even though I own two in my own family, right? But I'm not a crazy advocate. To me, is about whether you are financially able to. Okay, financial prudence is very important, right? I want to help people to achieve the gains that they can achieve in a way that they're not too stressed out. Okay, they are not too stressed out. So that is the most important thing. Okay. So for Chris, without understanding all the aspect of your situation, I would just say if you are currently staying in the flat and you have the ability to say after you sell this, you buy one and one more for investment, I will say yes. Please go ahead. Okay. Or if you're saying that, hey, Pete, after I sell this, I would just want to buy another flat, right? I would also encourage that. Because think about it now, okay, I would say encourage, but I would think it's a good idea, right? A good idea. Why? Because now there's going to be no more VERS, no more SERS. Okay. So the property, the lease decay is going to start, right? And now that you are still 40, likelihood you're still working, it might be a opportune time for you to look at the next property rather than looking at it when you're 50 or even 55. Okay. We don't know what God have planned for all of us. Maybe by then you will retire, you maybe stop working, then you might have loan issues. So if right now you are still working, you have income, you can take loan, right? And you want to buy a younger flat to extend your flat life so that you can pass it out to your children and whatnot, I think that's something that you can consider. Okay, fantastic. All right. Yeah. Okay. So do follow the Next Level Live also on IG. You can see once again the top left hand corner, or you can actually follow the YouTube. The YouTube subscription over here. Just subscribe to the YouTube channel. Once you click on the subscribe button, you will be notified as well. Okay. So in the next session, what I want to go through, okay, is this. I want to really talk about what are some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to buying, so that when you guys are investing the property, right, you can go in with more confidence as well. Okay? All right. Any more questions? If not, that's all we have for this time round. Okay, very good to see all of you here. All right, I hope you all had a great lunch and also had a great session, right? Understanding the Singapore property scene. And I'll see you all at the next one. Okay? Bye-bye.